What have you learned from your audience feedback? What is a target audience? A target audience can be either a group or an individual at which a product is aimed at and who are most likely to show interest in the product. Products can be anything from an advert, book, film, magazine, website, or a music video. The tone of a product should reflect the type of audience you are trying to reach. For example, a target audience could be teenagers, dog owners, older adults, single people, men, or women. Who is our target audience and how did you find it out? My target audience was mainly girls between the age of 15 to 19. However, my product could also be targeted at girls above the age of 19. I discovered who my target audience would be by completing questionnaires. I asked numerous of people within the age range of 15 to 29 what their favourite genre of music was. From asking that question, I found out that girls preferred the pop genre. I then went and asked those girls how old they were, with the majority of them being aged 15 to 19. After completing the questionnaire and taking on board the audience feedback, I decided to use a pop song that was more female-based, as the majority of girls listened to pop than boys. Furthermore, I then created another questionnaire which was aimed at my target audience only. I found out that females believe that they expect a pop song to be on a dance floor, as well as a narrative about friends. Taking on board my audience's feedback, I had to think hard and carefully about the mise-en-scene, setting and storyline so it would meet my audience's expectations. Doing this, I created a storyline based on a teenage girl who had very little confidence and her friends were there to pick her back up. I located my music video on a stage, which was the closest to a dance studio I could get, and I organised the mise-en-scene extremely well. All of this coming from having my audience feedback. Finally, I created a third and final questionnaire. I asked my target audience what sort of clothing do you expect to see in a pop music video. As a result, it is clear that the audience expect to see bright colours within a pop song. This feedback was very useful, as I took into consideration what they expected to see, and therefore, when it fit with the storyline, I had my artists wearing bright colours. I then went on to ask my target audience for ideas that they think would be essential to include in a pop song, or ideas that would make it look more professional. They said close-ups, an interesting storyline, lip syncing and special effects. I listened to what my target audience had to say and included all 4 of their ideas. I took on board that my audience wanted an interesting storyline, which after receiving this feedback, I planned ideas and came to a final decision. My storyline consisted of a young woman, teenager, who had very little self-confidence. However, you can see the progression through the video as she has support from her friends. During the next couple of lessons, I created my treatment and then received audience feedback. The treatment was confusing, with the feedback I received being that I needed to make sure my storyline was clear and understandable, and to also be more specific with what I'm talking about. To improve my treatment, I knew that I needed to change the narrative a little to make sure it did make sense. I also needed to go into further detail when talking about how my talent will overcome her lack of self-confidence. I changed my narrative to make it more understandable by adding in her friends a lot more often to show the support she is gaining. I included the artist ripping up magazines with models in to suggest that she is strong and that she doesn't want to look like the models, portraying the theme of female empowerment. I then went and presented my video pitch to a large audience similar to my target audience. I received loads of feedback on paper about my idea and the narrative. I received lots of positive feedback with comments such as my narrative being a strong message and also being very relatable. However, I did also receive some improvement feedback which I needed to consider and take on board. The most common being it is hard to film in a public place and maybe you can compare her to models in magazines or on social media to show the storyline clear and better. This made me rethink my narrative as I needed to make sure it was clear to the audience what was going on. After thinking, I decided to change from filming in a public place and completely forget that idea. I also decided that instead of comparing herself to her friends, I will have her comparing herself to celebrities and models, which is more realistic and relatable. This was very important criticism because without receiving this audience feedback, my music video wouldn't be as understandable and as good as it could be. After finishing my pitch, I moved on to creating a storyboard. My storyboard feedback was very clear and simple. The main feedback I needed to act on was including more close-ups at the beginning of the music video and also make sure locations aren't confusing and don't confuse the audience. I acted on this feedback and changed a couple of shots at the beginning of my music video to ensure I had close-ups, which was another coding convention my target audience expected to see in a pop song. I also then went on to get rid of some locations that I realised I did have too many and therefore it didn't look very professional and looked all over the place. Moreover, my improved storyboard had many more photos as my original storyboard lacked in them. The next task I had to do was think of a name for my artist. This was a quick and easy job as I jotted down names in a mind map and gave myself feedback. We took in consideration the connotations of each name and therefore we didn't choose any random name. I came to a final decision that Melody was the best name for my artist as it was catchy and also had connotations of music suggesting that she is serious about her musical career. After I had come up with a name, the next step was creating a logo for it. I did the same and created a mind map, then self-evaluated it after. After receiving the feedback I got, I decided that the bold, structured logo with the crotchet music note on the end would be the most suitable, suggesting that she is very organised and yet again serious about her music. Having the music note by the end of her name makes it more appealing but also gives her something to be remembered by. When coming up with Digipack designs, for my chosen design I received feedback from the target audience that the font was good and my use of close-ups of the artist made the Digipack stand out and look more appealing, catching the audience's eye. However, although my target audience said that they liked the use of close-ups, I received feedback which suggested that maybe I did have too many on there. Therefore, I took this on board and got rid of a few shots of the artist and replaced them with long shots or even mid shots. I also received feedback that suggested I reconsidered the colours on my Digipack and not use too many. Again, I listened to my audience feedback and changed the colours and decided to stick to a scheme of black, white and pink. The last task I had to do was to create an album poster. I drafted 2 album posters and received audience feedback for them both and then made a final decision. However, I did receive an important piece of criticism which was having the artist's name at the top of the page instead of near the bottom. I reconsidered where I was going to have my artist's name and decided to put it at the top of the page as it was more clearer and eye-catching for the audience. Overall, receiving audience feedback was extremely useful. I was able to adjust my own ideas to suit my target audience's expectations and to make sure I was including conventions that my audience wanted to see.